Pembincangan di waktu rehat lebih rancak perbincangan di udara kerana tadi kita membicarakan dengan Prof tentang kelajuan. Kerana kapal Ocean Shield itu tidak boleh bergerak laju kerana membawa tow ping locator, yang perlu untuk mengesan. Kerana kalau laju mungkin kita terlepas gelombang sebagainya. Kalau boleh bermula situ. Tapi Prof, kita baru mendapat isyarat bahawa Richard Quest sudah ada di talian. Would like now to go straight to Richard Quest. Richard, can you hear me?
I can indeed, Cameron.
Yes.
Good morning to you.
Yes. Okay, good morning to you too. It's actually evening here, and of course you're 12 hours away. Can you give us your view on how the coverage of the media, especially the Western media, had been on the Malaysian handling of this crisis? Because in recapping the last 31 days, for example, a lot of discrepancies has been reported, but a lot of people also in this country, Malaysia, feel that is a bit unfair because this is an unprecedented incident, and you know there's bound to be glitches here and there. But you have been giving points on both sides of the matter from my point of view. So how do you see after 31 days the way Malaysia has handled this crisis?
I think there's no doubt that the fundamental criticism of the Malaysian handling of the crisis has been more one of presentation and information than actually the handling of the investigation. We don't really know too much about the investigation. The information flow has been fairly slow. There have been isolated incidents where information has been given which has had to be corrected. Now, I think what we're talking about here, if you look at the difference between the way in which Malaysia handled it there's no doubt, there is no doubt at all that this has been unprecedented. It has been unique. No country has had to deal with this sort of situation. And I think, charitably speaking, what the best one can say is the authorities have been overwhelmed by what has happened. And therefore, this often came across as being disorganized, it came as being lack of information, and crucially, I think, there was the perception of a lack of transparency, whether true or not.
Yeah. Can I put to you another question based on the angle that because this is unprecedented and it is that kind of search and rescue mission where new leads, new grounds or breakthroughs are hard to come by, so that doesn't fit well into the very hungry 24-hour news and information kind of focus that the international media is giving. So you have to fill up certain things, but that gap creates all this stress and tension that is being reported.
Unfortunately, whether you're right, it doesn't matter. The standard for this sort of event has now been set by the NTSB in the United States. Mm-hmm. And in that case, if we take the Asiana crash at San Francisco, the head of the NTSB, Deborah Hertzman, was doing daily news conferences at the airport and revealing huge amounts of information. Mm-hmm. She was widely criticized by pilots and others in the industry for what she did. Mm-hmm. But she did it. Therefore, when you have your acting transportation minister standing up and basically saying, I can't tell you this and I can't tell you that, whilst at the same time there are officials leaking left, right and centre, you get the impression that there is something to hide. I'll give you an example.
Yes,
nothing could have been more damaging, nothing could have been more damaging to Malaysia's appearance of transparency than not correcting the all right, good night. The authorities allowed the all right, good night to perpetuate for days, if not weeks. There was plenty of opportunity for them to come out when the Telegraph reported it, when it was first said erroneously. There was plenty of time for them to come out and say, that is not correct. The correct words are this. The transcript will be published here. But they didn't. And they can't now complain when everybody says, you didn't tell us, you didn't correct something which you knew to be wrong.
Richard, mistakes happen, but I would like to refer to the unconfirmed reports that you mentioned. For example, the plane trying to evade radar of Indonesia, for example, and it's been categorically denied in the press conference that was last held. So, you know, quoting unnamed sources and all these things, it might be a clash of culture and values too, especially for these parts of the world, for example.
Well, let's talk about this business of the Indonesian turn. Mm-hmm. If you look, and I have read every single release that's been put out by the Malaysian authorities, and yes, there have been very full of expressions of regret and very full of expressions of intention of what they are going to do, and very full of expressions of how they will not stop until this plane has been found. But they've actually been rather fact-light. Mm-hmm. I understand that there has been a criminal, or there is a criminal investigation. I understand better than anybody else the requirements of Annex 13 of the ICAO Treaty. Mm-hmm. However, within those confines, there are plenty of things that Malaysia could have said which would have added to this. Let me give you one crucial piece of information on this. There is one glaring error. Mm-hmm. Malaysia has never said, at least to my knowledge, how it allowed the aircraft to cross the peninsula and didn't go and investigate. Mm-hmm. That is one of the most startling facts in this case that still remains to be answered. Now, sir, can you tell me why Malaysian military, having seen and tracked MH370 unidentified entirely across the country, did nothing?
Richard, I have limited time, but I would like to bring in one of my guests here in the studio, Captain Rahmat, to go on that point. Captain, if you please.
Okay, hi, Richard. I'm Rahmat. I was in the Air Force. Let me just clarify on that point. If you notice that on the first day itself, the Air Force has told the authorities that they tracked the aircraft turning westwards. It took a slow, gentle turn on to the left and crossed the peninsula, well, actually crossing somewhere near southern Thailand, which would have probably alerted the Thais as well, but we see that they did not scramble anything from the 56 Air Wing in Hat Yai, and crossed the peninsula to the waypoint Vampi, then went up to another waypoint called Gival, which is just south of Phuket. And this would have been detected also by at least the civilian authorities' radar, the secondary radar in Phuket. And even then, they did not scramble. I suppose the, because it's an aircraft that was coming in from Malaysia. It was flying from Malaysia going towards Vietnam at that time. And this was not seen as hostile.
Let me interrupt you.
Yeah.
Let me interrupt you. First of all, we do not know, because it has never been confirmed, whether it was actually flying waypoints, or was it merely flying a route that corresponds to nearby waypoints. Yeah. The Malaysian authorities have never confirmed, and in fact, they went further. They've actually said in the statement, no additional waypoints had been programmed. It's in the statements. So we don't know, with respect, whether or not it was flying waypoints, it was flying heading select, or it was flying by hand. That's perfect. The second thing on your point, I agree. That is a scandal. How did two countries, Thailand and Malaysia, bearing in mind the transponder at this point had been switched off, and we know the ACARS wasn't working or hadn't been transmitting since 107, both Thailand and Malaysia saw this unidentified flying object crossing their peninsula, heading towards their airspace, and did nothing. Go back to Helios, 2005. Jets were scrambled within an hour of that Cypriot plane going missing. Within an hour and 20, the jets were standing or were next to the aircraft. So my point, gentlemen, is that there are serious questions to be answered about the handling of this incident, separate from any question about what was happening on the aircraft, because I don't believe we can know what happened on the aircraft until we get more information.
Okay.
But we most certainly can ask,
Richard,
what did the authorities do?
Richard, I'm bringing in another captain here of 747, Peter Talala, please.
Richard, good day to you. Look,
Good day, sir.
I can't argue with you on that point about, that the ball was dropped and the airplane. But you're comparing the third world to Europe. That was over the EU. Of course they're going to launch jets. You're comparing our investigation into this to the NTSB. We don't have Boeing. We don't build aeroplanes. We're a third world country just coming out of the dark ages. You can't seriously put that on us. We've tried our best. And I think that some of the things in the media has been slanderous without proper facts, which have been retracted. And it is this 24-hour news streaming, I think there needs to be some fairness. And to be quite fair, I think you've got to accept that we are not Europe, we are not the United States. And with what we have tried our utmost to solve this. And on a last point, we have got the United States, we have got Australia, we've got the French out there, and no one's found it in very timely fashion. Hopefully these pings are the right thing.
Let's dissect exactly what you've just said, and I promise you this, sir. If I had made your comments that you have just made, which I would not make, I absolutely would not make, and I do not agree at all with what you have just said. But if I had said what you have just said about being a developing country, not up to the task, unable to do it, unfair to compare, you, sir, would be the first person to be criticizing me, making comments bordering on racism. What I'm saying
Richard,
is
we've descended into racism. Let's keep this constructive, old boy.
What I'm saying is you would be accusing me if I said that. I am saying the NTSB went too far in Asiana. The BEA gave no information in Air France. But if you take, for example, the AAIB in British Airways 32 at Heathrow, within a day or two, we had a statement of facts. Now, whether Malaysia likes it or not, you are the state of registry and the state of operator, correct?
Correct.
Malaysia, the Annex 13 duties falls on Malaysia. And I know from Malaysian that you're quite capable of dealing with an air crash investigation, even one of this magnitude and size. And
even when we were out of our depth, we still called for help.
Peter, I have to end this soon.
You called for help on the... Listen, I know the facts. I know the facts. You called for help on day one.
Granted.
And
Richard,
Boeing, Airbus, the total... So,
Richard, that's why my next question to you is, after all this, would you still fly Malaysian airline system? And based on your own experience doing a story on MAS, for example, you have been consistent in saying that you've seen very capable pilots at work, and you've seen how the system works. So would you still be having that opinion even now?
Right. Of all the questions that I've been asked this morning, that is by far the most ridiculous. Because, of course, I would still fly Malaysian Air. I would get on one of Malaysia Air's comfortable 777s tomorrow. Of course, there is no safety issue with Malaysia Air that is any different to any other global carrier.
Would you agree that this could have happened to any airline around the world? Any country?
Oh, yes. Oh, I have no question at all, no doubt at all, that whichever scenario we choose, in what took place, this is certainly not unique to Malaysia or to any. Of course it could. Look at Ethiopian recently had a hijacking by the pilot. You had Silk. You've got. I mean, there's no question in my mind that this is not a Malaysian issue as such. This is a. Let's go. Whichever scenario, ultimately, deep questions have to be asked by the aviation industry, and those questions concern real-time data from the aircraft, real-time tracking from the aircraft, and all those sort of things. And if Malaysian authorities are deficient in anything, sir, it is the presentation of the way they didn't build confidence.
Thank you so much, Richard, for making time to be on Astro AWANI. Thank you so much. I have to go for the next break. Saya terpaksa bagi rehat dahulu. Apabila kita kembali, kita akan dapatkan komen daripada 4 panelis ini tentang apa yang dibincangkan sebentar tadi. Selepas ini.